talk about wine. So
Yeah.
welcome everybody tonight. We're going to hear about the wines of Sardinia, and I can't wait to hear about them.
Virginia?
Um, we want
Sardinia.
to, I want to welcome you. I want to
Okay,
thank Capital Federal for funding Retroactive, and also Sharon and David Katzman, who their generous donation is also funding our fun tonight with Steve. We're going to hear so much. The man is a walking encyclopedia. So,
I mostly make it up, but yeah.
spoken like a good teacher. So
Mhm.
anyway, welcome tonight, and I can't wait to hear all about these wonderful wines. I did look up Mille Luci. It means
Yes,
1,000 lights, which is a
that's
lovely name for a wine.
yeah,
And then the other Cannonau is cannon. So that one must really hit you hard. I'm not sure. So
yeah.
carry on and let's hear all about it.
All right. Well, so today we're going to taste some wine from Sardinia, and as a place, the second, I think, largest island in the Mediterranean, so a fairly large piece of real estate. It is based on its location, sort of been a think of it more like a way station on human migration. So humans have been here for a crazy long time, thousands of years. We're talking like in some cases 1200 BCE. So the vines that grow here have adapted. I mean, you can see behind me, this is a vineyard in Sardinia. The vines are kind of, fairly rugged. Let's make sure everybody has their computer muted at the moment. There we go. So the topography is fairly rugged. It's not a lot of water. As you can see, the vines pretty much have to struggle a little bit, but this is an area that historically, I mean, again, grapes have been grown here for a very long time, but the quality of Sardinian wine. I mean, when I started selling wine in the mid 90s, Sardinian wine wasn't that great. It really, you could kind of you could recognize it because it was fairly pruny. It was fairly overripe. There we go. And that largely changed in the mid 90s when winemakers from the mainland of Italy retired to Sardinia, and they're like, hey, guys, you're sort of doing it wrong. I mean, you've been doing it right for a very long time, but we don't. Whoop, I think everybody needs to mute their computer. We're getting a little feedback, just a little bit. All right. So the problems that they were experiencing were related to things that were fairly solvable. They had great grapes. The grapes were acclimated perfectly to their environment, but they were picking the fruit in the middle of the day. And the middle of the day, it might have been kind of balmy when the harvest was occurring. They were also fermenting the wines in fairly rustic conditions. And when, today, if you're a winery, I mean, a high quality winery, probably you have facility, I mean, equipment in your winery for the purpose of fermenting grapes at a cooler temperature. So a fermentation tank would be lined with lines circulating glycol, so a cooling agent. And so the mainland of Italy had been using refrigeration on their fermenters for a fair amount of time. The importance in having that fermentation cooled is when wine ferments, it actually gives off a lot of heat. And if that heat is not dissipated some way or mitigated, it sort of cooks the fruit, and that was showing up in the wine. The wine was the wines of Sardinia again in the early 90s were pruny. They really weren't that. I mean, the quality wasn't that great. So as more and more winemakers from the mainland of Italy say, and think of places like Tuscany, where the quality of the wine is outstanding, and they really, every detail is well managed. So when they were getting this advice from those winemakers, they're like, two things, pick at night where your fruit is not cooking in the heat, and refrigerate your fermenters, your fermentation tanks, to keep them from getting pruny. And I mean, it really was just a couple vintages where there was definitely noticeable difference. The quality, the fruit was a lot more expressive. The pruniness kind of dissipated. I mean, you didn't notice that as a signature. Still, there's still wineries that are not making outstanding wine, as there are in every wine region, but the overriding practices were kind of retooled, and that really opened the doors for a lot of things. So in the modern age, despite being grapes that, I mean, for example, the red grape, Cannonau, we believe has probably been in Sardinia for 3,000 years. The Naragas, little less time, but still, these are grapes. These are. I mean, you're drinking, a human treasure. I mean, regardless of whether you're Italian or not. I mean, the human civilization has we collectively own certain things, and this is one of those great kind of wine honey holes, as far as varietals that have been around for a long time. So that's kind of, I guess, what to know about Sardinia. Very old winemaking tradition. However, the modern world, I mean, the modern era has ushered in some good improvements, making them, I would say, more reliable, certainly, and more significant in the global perspective. I mean, you don't, if you were tasting these wines next to wines from other countries of great winemaking, tradition, they would stand out for their uniqueness. They would not stand out for their flaws. So that's kind of where Sardinian wine, in large part, is today. So let's start with this first wine. It is a white wine. The grape is called Naragas, and it's a very cool wine. Originally, Sardinian. I mean, I had to look this up. So 1200 BCE, the Naragic tribes lived in Sardinia, and I mean, this predates Phoenicians and Romans and all of the people who came after, but the Naraga would build these, I guess the easiest way to describe it sort of looks like a turret on a castle. So circular, built up many levels. It in my research, they really don't know exactly what these were used for. It's believed that probably these stone structures were used by elders in the tribe. I mean, it was a sign of kind of prestige. They probably were used for defense, because why wouldn't you? We certainly adapted that structure on castles and things like that. I mean, if you have a cylindrical fortified structure that gives you a 360-degree view, that's a pretty good vantage point. But it's not entirely clear what these structures were used for outside of homes, and given the effort required to build them, it was probably homes of noble people, of tribal leaders, and if there was an aristocracy, that those would be the people who would live in these. But though the Naraga or Naragi is what this grape is named after. And it's a grape that again has been in Sardinia for I think again I said 1200 BCE. So a long time. It's a fairly workhorse grape. It's fairly prolific, and prior to kind of the improved viticulture and viniculture skills of the late 90s, it probably was a fairly I mean, it was a prolific wine, but not of great quality. The quality has definitely improved, again, large part due to better winemaking and grape growing skills. And this is actually a controlled region. This Naragas comes from Sardinia, Naragas de Caligari, which in the southern portion of the island. And anytime you see on a wine label a region that is defined, demarcated by usually the government, a regulatory agency will create a protected region. Anytime you see a grape associated with that, you're probably going to be okay. The quality of that is going to be assured in a number of ways. Sometimes even tasting panels will ensure that these grapes are of the quality representing that wine region. So, but the grape, so fairly prolific. It is when we have grapevines that are predisposed to producing a lot of fruit. That's really where controlling the conditions in the vineyard, whether that means sometimes shutting off water and forcing them to basically choose their best grapes. Grapevines they're very cool. They kind of sense the conditions, and if the irrigation stops, or if they're pruned back heavily, the vine knows that it needs to restrict its yield. So you will essentially have the vine curtail the production itself. And so there's some techniques in the vineyard that are used for curtailing production, and that's what has happened with Naragas. As a grape, it has a fairly thick skin, which I mean, it's funny. I had to go back and taste this wine a couple times because color, for those of you tasting the white, I mean, the color is kind of this golden straw. This is a 2022, which is in no way an old wine, but it has the appearance of this. It has the appearance of a wine that might be a little bit older. And so I had to go back a couple times. I mean, I've sold this wine, and I'm always kind of second guessing whether it's okay. It's still drinking well. But the grape itself, again, has a fairly thick skin and imparts in the wine that golden straw color. So even current vintage, there is a 2023 version of this, but even current vintage wines, just released from the winery, are going to have this golden color. But very, very citrus driven. Kind of wines often, we always say things that grow together go together, and wines that reside in areas where there is a fair amount of consumption of fish typically do well with fish. And this is a wine that really loves anything out of the water. It appreciates generally the lighter. I mean, I would probably say the oilier fish might not do as well as the lighter fish, but and shellfish, but very much geared toward those, you know, toward a pescatarian diet. Um, yeah, um, really nice richness. I would say, I mean, on a body scale, maybe a medium minus, but it has more weight in the mouth than, say, Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand, you know, where it's a little racier. Good acid, kind of a sweet almond note, apple, citrus. Um, really, again, really complementary to anything out of the water. But this is, I mean, this is a cool wine. I mean, you can, you know, we're fortunate enough to be living in a time when the quality of the wine that we're drinking today is again far better than it was. But humans have been drinking this wine in probably a more rustic version uh for a fat minute. And I guess I'm always drawn to wines like this because um you know, this is as close as we can get to really returning to the past and imagining, you know, I mean, we're actually ingesting something that humans before us ingested, and again, probably not in as good a version, but you know, humans have decided that this grape in this region was an important enough thing to keep around for again, literally thousands of years. um oh, now I'm getting a little kind of a pretty like white flower, like carnation or something. um but really, I mean, just I love this wine. It's fairly unique. You don't see a lot of wines in the average, you know, on the on in a wine list, for example, in a restaurant, that would have both this body richness and texture. This is a grape that definitely reflects its provenance. Um, any questions on the Naragas?
We have a question in the Morgan household. What do you mean by medium minus when it comes to
Oh,
body?
so um, body. That's a really good question, because this is something that um, it actually, the way we, so body is kind of the how the wine presents itself on the tongue, and it can get a little vague in describing it, but the easiest way to think about it is with milk. Um, if you think of water having zero body, a neutral body rather, and then go start with skim milk, and then maybe 0.5% and 2%, and all the way half and half, whole milk half and half, up to whipping cream. That's really the spectrum of body. So from skim milk to whipping cream. When I say medium minus, I'm thinking probably, you know, in that 1%, maybe 2% milk, but it's not, I think it's less than 2%, which I would think of maybe more as a medium body. Whereas, you know, medium plus, now we're getting to whole milk. And full, you know, half and half to whipping cream. So yeah, that medium minus is it's not, it's again somewhere between 1% and 2% milk, as that feels in the mouth. But actually, it is in a lot of, I mean, particularly with red wine, it's actually a presence of lactic acid. So you're really comparing apples to apples in that sense. I mean, the weight of lactic acid on the palate is reflective of that body. Did that answer?
Yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
I can
No,
follow
I
now.
mean, I always tell people, you know, regardless of what you're thinking, I mean, speak your own language, definitely think about terms that are meaningful to you, but with respect to body, because body is often more is often more just is often more of a consideration of wine drinkers than other things. I mean, you don't need to know. I mean, for example, in the wine world, there are probably 5 to 10 grapes that most wine drinkers are familiar with. And as you've known, as we've tasted wine over the years here, there are literally, well, hundreds, if not thousands, of grapes that potentially can do that job. And so describing a grape, well, what is this grape like? And you can only say, well, it's sort of like Cab, or it's sort of like Pinot Noir. In many cases, it's really not sort of like those. I mean, how similar is an apple to a pear? Well, there are similarities, but one is a pear and one is an apple. And so body allows you to kind of say, listen, if you like a crunchy Granny Smith apple, maybe you'll like a crunchy pear, so or if you like the tartness of one fruit, maybe you'll like the tartness of another. And but for the most part, it really does come down to, I mean, when we organized our store, we organized it by body and not by varietal, because literally there could be, I mean, how many Naraga sections have you seen in a liquor store? There's not an area for it. So body is an easier way of grouping wines. I mean, if you like Sauvignon Blanc, which is a fairly light-bodied wine, another light-bodied wine is probably going to appeal to you. Now, if I said, well, try this really rich, barrel-aged Chardonnay that really has the body of cream, that doesn't compare to the body of Sauvignon Blanc. So body is a good way. I mean, I would say if you're in a restaurant or you have a question about a wine, say, what I'm looking for is something with the body of, I mean, and think about it, light-bodied, medium-bodied, full-bodied. If they need more description, think of a style of milk and tell them that. Say, well, I want something that's sort of like 2% milk in the mouth. So body is, I guess, is I would say probably more overlooked as a way of navigating wine than I believe it should be. I think body tells you, more people associate wine with body, whether they know that or not, associate it with body rather than the flavors so much, or the grape varietal, so. But yeah, body's a good way to kind of break wines apart.
So along those lines, when I tasted this, I was struck by how its uniqueness, as you said. And I was trying to think, well, what would I compare it to? And I thought the closest I could come was a Sauvignon Blanc, as you said. But it's interesting. I had an interesting time thinking about exactly that comparison and
Yeah.
how compared to a Sauvignon Blanc. And I noticed more apple in this, and I think a little bit more minerality, but there are several dimensions in which I'd say it's like a Sauvignon Blanc, but still comes across as remarkably unique in that respect.
Yeah. Well, and typically, so as an example, Sauvignon Blanc loves being near water. So Sardinia, I would guess that there are places that in Sardinia that could produce actual Sauvignon Blanc. I mean, there are other areas in the world where, I mean, for example, Greece. Greece can produce Sauvignon Blanc. It's balmy in some areas. It's not in others. I mean, like if you look at the mountain range behind me, I'm thinking if you were up closer up on the hillside, what would naturally happen in the afternoon is that the temperature would start to drop and cold air moves down. So the cool air from the mountain would start to cascade down to the valley. And if you were growing a cool climate grape, you'd probably want to move it closer off the valley floor and into that cooler area where that breeze is kind of going to wash down and cool down the vines. But this is a grape that it really, I mean, based on the color of the wine, I would say would not qualify as a cool climate grape. I mean, typically, cool climate grapes don't have a skin that is really, really thick. I mean, it will grow thicker in certain environments, but this is a wine. I mean, unique is the only way to describe it. This is a wine that over many generations of drinking has adapted to its climate. So, you know, it may be that where this is, and I don't know, but it may be that where this wine is grown, there's more wind. Islands often have issues with wind. Well, grapes will respond to that. Grapes will respond to that by making their exterior a little more fortified, because that wind is, they don't want the grapes smashing around, and the grapes know this, so they will develop a thicker skin, and with that thicker skin comes a fuller color, little, you know, you get that golden hue to it. But no, I mean, the fact that this grape, which is growing in a again, a more than likely a warmer climate than some places, still has acidity. That's an indication that this grape is adapted to this area. So it doesn't convert to sugar. Oftentimes, you know, very, very warm climate wines they'll just get very sweet because nature will naturally develop sugars. This grape is adapted such that it doesn't. It definitely, again, it has more color, which gives, and a thicker skin, which gives it a little more body, but the acidity in the wine is still there. And you know, more than likely the people who have grown this over the years, you know, probably there were a couple of vintages where maybe it did get a little too ripe, and they said, well, you know, it really doesn't work with our diet, so it was adjusted to you know, maybe we harvest a little earlier. But this wine, I mean, I would say if I were picking a more common varietal, maybe Chenin Blanc. The apple pear and little white flower note, just, it sort of reminds me of Chenin. I think that might be it. It's not as edgy as Sauvignon Blanc, and the color would throw me off. So I think I would probably lean toward a white grape that naturally had a thicker skin. But it is, I mean, I love the fact, I mean, it's, you know, you want to put everything in a not pigeonhole, but you want to organize things in context. And this is a wine that, because of its uniqueness, it sort of borrows from a lot of things and therefore leaves it in a category of its own. I love, I mean, I love wines like this. Personally, I don't like to drink the same thing over and over again. There's just too much on the world wine tour to stop and spend, you know, a long time on one thing. Now, that said, I do have favorites, but this is a wine that kind of, you know, again, it's its own thing. And it is sort of hard to, I mean, again, from the color, from the body, the flavor profile, the mouthfeel, it really, I would not be able to, if I didn't know what this was, I would not be able to accurately identify it, certainly. Any other thoughts or questions on the Nuragas. Well, shall we move to the next one, to the red? So this Centosere, the grape, and I need to open my bottle. Hopefully it is not corked. But this is a grape that I particularly like. It's a grape that has been in Sardinia for at least 3,000 years. And the reason I like this wine, well, we'll talk about, there are a number of reasons, but one of the reasons that I like this wine is that yeah, that's good. For much of my early wine career, the argument was kind of a battle about who invented Grenache. And the French, they use Grenache in the south of France, yeah, in fairly large volume. And Spain, where they call it Garnacha, but they use a lot of Grenache there. And so, for a long time, it really was a battle between the French and the Spanish over, it originated here, no, it originated there, and they would argue back and forth. And what amuses me is, I want to say, I may be completely off. I want to say it was late 90s, early 2000s. They were doing an archaeological dig in Sardinia, and they found remnants of a grape. They analyzed the remnants, and they compared it to the dates of other artifacts that they were discovering. And it was concluded that actually both the Spanish and the French were wrong. It didn't originate in either place because the grape Cannonau, which is the DNA equivalent to Grenache, had existed in Sardinia for more than 1,000 years before any reference of it in France or Spain. So it amuses me just because people argue about stuff, and it's kind of fun to see when both sides lose. Both lost the argument, but this grape, 3,000 years is how long it's been consumed by humans, grown for production of wine and consumed by humans in Sardinia. Sardinia also, and there's been a little bit of an update on this, but years ago there was a book written that described areas in the world that centenarians far exceeded the average number of, well, actually, it wasn't even centenarians. It was people in their 90s and over 100. The volume of those people, of that population, exceeded the average of other places. And the author identified Sardinia as what became referred to as blue zones, a blue zone. Kyoto, Japan was also a blue zone. Oddly, there's a little place, there's a tiny town in California that has been added as a blue zone. And the author of the author of the book consulted scientists and kind of analyzed and synthesized their research and kind of discovered, there were certain commonalities between these blue zones. Those living in the blue zone ate certain foods that were naturally healthier. They tended to, exercise, walk more. They tended to socialize, very important to socialize later in life with people in their community. So they did not, they stayed connected with other humans. And Sardinia was, again, it was identified as one of these blue zones because there were a lot of 90 to 100-year-old people that far exceeded the average number of 90 and 100-year-old people in the average population elsewhere in the world. And they looked at their diet, and their diet was fairly good. I mean, fairly, not surprisingly good. A lot of things out of the ocean. They ate a lot of vegetables. There's a grass-fed grass-fed sheep's milk cheese native to Sardinia called pecorino. And this cheese was crazy high in omega-3 fatty acids. Now, none of this was engineered. I mean, they didn't set out to do all these things. It was discovered that, well, these people, they eat fish and pecorino and vegetables. And there was one other thing. They drank a fair amount of this wine. So the authors of the study kind of looked and, well, what about Canna now? What about this old grape makes it special? And they discovered that this wine is abundantly high in polyphenols. And polyphenols are very good for us. They lower inflammation, they improve circulation. They're antioxidants. They do a lot of good things for our body. And so they found that the people of Sardinia, aside from walking a lot, not snacking, eating a diet mostly of fish and lighter proteins, red meat was a rarity. It was really more of a special occasion thing. They ate this cheese that had high levels of omega-3 fatty acids. That all of this worked well to create a healthy lifestyle that caused them to live longer. Now, so that was Blue Zones. There's a documentary you can watch. It's really intriguing. The Blue Zone concept has actually been sort of brought back into the news recently because there have been some other authors who have looked at it and said, well, yeah, but maybe not everybody, maybe the records of these people being 90 to 100 years old, maybe they're not accurate. And it would appear that in some of the blue zone areas that record keeping was an issue, and that the accuracy of the age of the study candidates, there may have been some questions. However, Sardinia was not one of the areas that had any. I mean, the demographers looked at all of these issues and they said, well, no, we looked at civic records. We looked at records from the church. We looked at genealogy records. We cross-referenced all of that and know that, the guy sitting over there probably smoking an unfiltered cigarette. That's the other weird thing. Like, they have these healthy diets and then they smoke, like they hand roll their own cigarettes and they puff away. And it's like, how do you do that? But turns out, no, in Sardinia, at least, not all of the blue zones, I think, are probably true blue zones. Again, based on this issue of, well, do we have enough data that is accurate enough to say that person really is as old as they say? But no, in Sardinia, they've concluded, the demographers have concluded that no, more than likely, this really is a blue zone. People are as old as they are. And we do know that they do live a fairly active lifestyle. They eat healthy, they have healthy diets, and they fortify with a little bit of canna now and then. So it's I would say, despite the fact that maybe not all of the belief around blue zones is what we thought it was originally, the overall message and the author's overall message is still true. There are certain traits in living a long life that are you can't argue about, and being active, you know, associating with other people, interaction, human interaction. We're human. We're you know, we're definitely communal beings, and so we do better when we're with other people. But also, you know, eating well and drinking Canada. So so that's the history of this grape. Very old. One of the oldest grapes on the island, and regardless of whether it you know, it affords you some great longevity in life, who cares? It's delicious. So let's talk about the deliciousness. Cherries, red plum. I mean, cherry and berry. That's what I'm on the nose. That's really what I get most often. And that's true. I mean, Grenache. Grenache is more red fruit driven. So think, you know, cherries, raspberries, strawberries, cranberries in some cases, but red berries. That's kind of the marker of this. But juicy red berries. There's some nice spice, and most certainly, and minerality is a vague term, but I guess I would say if you look behind me at that mountain range, if you could go and pour water on the rock face that's coming down there, and then smell that rock face, it would smell. There would be a common smell with this. There's a wet rock note to it. There's a minerality to it. And I love it when wines are reflective of where they're from. I think that's one of the intriguing things about wine. Yeah. Yeah, cherries and berries. Juicy, good structure, not overly dry. I mean, you think about, you know, why would Sardinians want to drink this wine? Well, if you were, you know, living, if your diet, you know, in large part comes from the ocean, you get a piece of fish, you grill the fish, you really wouldn't want you wouldn't, I mean, Cabernet, that would not be the greatest wine that you would have with that grilled fish. I mean, there may be some oilier fishes that might do better with the more tannic wine of Cabernet. But this has a juiciness that if you were, you know, having a lighter grilled fish, it's gonna be delicious. If you're having that pecorino cheese, that salty, I mean, you can almost when you eat pecorino, you can kind of crunch down on the grains of salt in the cheese. You know, you have that saltiness. You want something to contrast that. So the fruitiness and the acid of this wine are going to be a perfect, you know, will collaborate very nicely with that pecorino. So the style of this wine very much reflects the food ways of the people who are drinking it. And I'm a big fan of Grenache. I wish I sold more Grenache. It's not a wine that I think we sell in abundance of, and demand for it nationally. I mean, it's good, but we sell far more Cabernet than we do Grenache. But I like this wine because it's very versatile. You could have it with, you know, pasta with red sauce. You could have it with chicken. You could have it with duck. You could have it with, you know, you could have it with beef. It would not be overpowered by the beef. And you know, but it's a very versatile wine. And so the food products, the food ways of this region definitely shine in this glass. Yeah, I'm starting to get a little bit of floral. It because of those polyphenols, there's a lot of chemistry that as the wine opens up, as it oxidizes, as it's exposed to oxygen, it's going to change. It's going to adapt. Now, unfortunately, because this has an abundance of antioxidants, sometimes it takes a little while. But this is also, I guess you could extend this to the issue of the importance of being a blue zone, the importance of human contact and human interaction. So I think what this tells you is, you sit down with your friends and family and you have some food and you pour yourself a glass of wine and you don't leave the table until it stops changing. And that may be an hour or two. And you just sit there and enjoy the company of these other people. And that, it's wine should be kind of an impetus to other good behavior. And that hanging out with people drinking wine, relaxing, living in the moment, enjoying good food. Those are the things that, our ancestors spent a lot of time, hanging out in the caves up there. And the fact that we can sit down at a dinner table and not have to hang out in the cave, we should appreciate that. They didn't have that. We do. So we should relish those types of things. Any questions about the canon now?
I guess I would encourage people when you get a minute to go to their website. It's pala.it, like Italy. Their descriptions are pretty over the top and interesting. But it does suggest on this one to uncork at least 30 minutes before pounding.
That's I love that because they're providing you kind of two things. One, hey, this wine doesn't like jump out of the bottle because we know chemically it has things that do not want to oxidize. And but once it does, crush it, buy another one. That's very Italian.
I was
Very,
wondering if
like,
pounding was a more technical term than that, but apparently not.
pounding, yeah, no, pounding is what you could imagine. It's
Okay.
I kind of wish they hadn't said that because
They're trying to sell wine, right?
yeah, no, it's still a business and I get that. At the same time though, they're Italian and Italians don't pound things, you Americans, we pound things. They don't. I mean, we go to Italy and we're like, so why did you pour me 4 ounces of wine? What am I supposed to do with this? Well, that's your pour, we can fill it up again, but no, that's the glass of wine, and we're not pounding. We don't have a 32 ounce big gulp. We actually, that's a really sad thing. In reading about kind of the new thoughts about the kind of the reevaluating the idea of blue zones, they went back to Kyoto and areas surrounding there where, obviously Japan, crazy old, like whatever they're doing, they've done a great job in sustaining humans on their islands. The sad thing is, and this is an American thing, but they have noticed changes in the blue zones, in Kyoto particularly, that are largely attributed to convenience stores, which we definitely invented the convenience store. The bodega has always existed, but a place where you can get like 12,000 calories for $2, that's us. And they have so they're seeing changes, unfortunately. Fast food, things that are more convenience items. It's not, this is not an artisan food product. This is a commercial food product designed to be tasty and throwaway. And so there is some changes that unfortunately modern society is reshaping. So I guess it's possible there are certain areas that are blue zones today that won't be blue zones in the future. which is unfortunate. So yeah, keep drinking Canna now, just to be safe. Just and pound it, because that's what you're supposed to do. Definitely pound Canna now. But yeah, Paula is a great winery. I mean, it's a great example of modern Sardinia. And I've like I said, I remember when the vast majority of Sardinian wine that I was tasting, it was complete throwaway. I mean, I wouldn't even want to sell it. It was just really not well made. And this was before we even knew that there were health benefits to drinking certain varietals. But I guess the last thing I would say on the Blue Zone, though, is it really is something that you know, and I think this is probably maybe an American thing. We like to pick and choose the things we like and don't like. And Sardinians don't snack much. That's not a thing. They eat their largest meal in the middle of the day, so they have the rest of the day to burn it off. And they probably do, because they walk. And so eating delicious food, like having cheese as part of your main diet, and wine, it is good, but it has to be taken collectively with all of the other important elements of the Blue Zones that have been identified. But yeah, I've not been to Sardinia myself, but it's a place that I very much want to visit, because of their significance in the larger wine world. Again, humans have been making wine here for a fat minute, and it's cool that we still are able to experience that, not all that differently from, you know, how the ancients did. So a very cool little time travel you can do. Fairly inexpensive for time travel. I mean, you know.
No, I think it's really good. I like it a lot.
Well, it's a very crowd pleasing wine. It has some nice spice to it. It's juicy. It's dry, but not overly dry. And again, goes with all sorts of different things. So lots and lots of different foods that love Grenache. And the funny thing is, those things can be French, they can be Spanish, they can be Italian. They may argue about the origins of those things, but they're all really sort of drinking the same wine. So it definitely can cross a lot of boundaries, you know, geographic boundaries, and do well on the table. Any other thoughts?
I'm still thinking about pounding wine.
Well, you know, I guess we will, I mean, we've always referred to certain, usually summer wines, white wines, rosés, as porch pounders. I mean, you sit on the porch and you pound it, you drink it, you kill the bottle. I don't know if, yeah, I mean, I guess, I don't know. I would probably, if I had been editing the copy on that one, I probably would said, you know, maybe this is not a pounder. I mean, it's yeah. There's another wine. There's another grape that we didn't touch on, but it's called Monica, and that's a little more bold. So I guess Paolo makes a Monica as well. The Monica has more tannin. So I guess if they have to pound one of Paolo's wines, it's probably that's probably the red that would be best suited.
I looked up pounding wine. Can you see this?
Yeah, right. No, that's it. That's what it is. I mean, see, I think, yeah, probably, I mean, there's pounding wine also, you know, I mean, you think it's more of a college fraternity sorority thing, but they have what's referred to as Tour de Franzia, and where you ride around on tricycles, drinking a 5-liter bag in a box of Fred Franzia.
It's slap in the bag.
Yeah, exactly. And
I don't think
that's
I've seen
pounding.
anything like that.
Yes,
College
yes.
days.
To me, that is pounding.
Okay,
But
I don't pound anymore. I don't pound.
no, I think it's okay if I mean in the summertime when it's really hot and you want that refreshment, that's one thing. But this to me doesn't, I'm not certain I would think of it as a pounder. But I mean there's in Spain they have this device. It sort of looks like a wine decanter with a straw sticking out of the side of it. It's called a porron, and you fill that often with a light, juicy wine, and then one person will pour it out of the porron into your mouth, and you kind of chug it. I guess they're probably doing garnacha or some lighter style wine in Spain. So maybe I don't know. Maybe it's okay to pound. It's Italian though. It just seems disrespectful to pound an Italian
Does.
wine,
Yes.
but
Okay. Well, I see by the old clock on the wall, and I had to mute because I forgot I have a cuckoo clock in here.
that's awesome.
So, the old clock on the wall says it's 6 o'clock, and so I guess we've heard a lot about these two wonderful wines.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you so much.
my
It's
pleasure.
fascinating to hear about that. I didn't know anything about mouthfeel.
Yeah.
Um,
No, well, this is I mean the body, yeah. But thinking about wines with respect to body, I think that's an easy
Yeah.
guide, because if you like a certain body of wine, there are other grapes that have the same body that more than likely you will like as well.
Right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing with us. And any idea where we're going to travel to next time?
I don't. I will have to see. I mean, this time of year, I don't. If there are any requests, I'd be happy to oblige. January,
Winter wine.
yeah,
Yeah.
winter wine.
Yeah.
I would guess we'll probably do something maybe a little fuller bodied, just because, in the winter, the fuller bodied wines, I mean, nobody mows the lawn in July and chugs a glass of warm milk. Pounds a glass of warm
We
milk.
all learned a new
So
word today.
yeah, so we'll, I think probably something that has some richness that in the cold days of January we can just sit back and enjoy. So I
Okay.
don't have an idea yet, but
You're going to know it though.
yes,
You're going to come up with it.
Right.
This
we
I'm
will
sure of.
engineer that. Yes,
Well,
yes.
thank you all for being here
Thank
tonight,
you.
and have a lovely holiday, whatever it is you're pounding.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no,
Tell-
sip more, pound less. Like save
Tell
pounding.
everyone your public library taught you how to pound wine.
Right, exactly. So I hear that the Lawrence Public Library is about binge drinking.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We're getting a reputation around
No.
here.
Yeah.
Well, my mother always said that a glass of wine before dinner loosens the tongue and whets the appetite.
Absolutely.
go.
That is as old school as it is.
That is exactly right.
The
So
people from Sardinia would agree.
that's exactly right. Well, thank you for sharing with us tonight.
Thank
And
you.
thank you, everybody, for joining us. And we'll
Cheers.
see you in a month and see some of you at our next retroactive event. And have a good evening. Is it a
Thank
full
you.
moon tonight? It's so dark, but so bright when that
Yeah.
moon comes up.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Cheers.
much.
you.
Good night,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Good night.